Welcome to the Student Shield podcast. I'm Mike, sitting alongside
the Nelliest of bellies,
Nelson Richards, as he goes by on his social security form. We are sitting here today talking about a comic book again.
Wow, really? We never do those.
No, we've never talked about a comic book before, right?
No.
Okay. Nelson, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about Hawkeye by Matt Fraction and David Aja.
Along with Francisco Francavilla and Javier Pulido and some other artists.
And others.
And others. There's a lot of people who worked on this book. And we're just kind of, not so much like, I don't know if I'm going to label this as review yet or just discussion, but we're basically just going to be talking about one of our favorite books of all time. I read it over the summer. We have it collected in the 2 hardcovers that came out. We don't have the omnibus because we wanted the hardcovers because they're cheaper.
Oh yeah.
And it's the same amount of content. It's not really a thick omnibus.
I couldn't warrant getting this as an omnibus. It's too small for me.
Yeah, I also think it works fine in the hardcovers.
Yeah.
Especially if you get Volume 3 like I do, which Volume 3 is not written by Fraction, it's written by Jeff Lemire. It's more supplemental material anyway. It totally works to have all 3 on a shelf. But we are going to be talking about the life and times of Clint Barton and Kate Bishop.
Hawkeye and Hawkeye.
Hawkeye and Hawkeye in Matt Fraction's. What I've said after while I was reading it, I said this is Matt Fraction doing Shane Black buddy cop drama or dramedy. Because it's a mixture of drama and comedy and action. So let's kind of dive in. We're just going to go a little bit arc by arc here and just kind of talk about the things we love about it. So Nelson, you want to kick us off here?
Okay, so one of the things we noticed right out of the gate, issue number 1, is that Hawkeye he's an Avenger, but he is more so a human, meaning He is nowhere near invincible. These large-scale fights, they kind of kick the shit out of him, honestly.
Also, that first splash page by Aja is directly in reference to that scene from the first Avengers movie.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
But instead of the movie where he catches it and he swings, he gets on it.
He lands.
He dies.
He lands on top of a car and ends up in the hospital in a full body cast.
With a shattered pelvis, 3 broken ribs, sprained neck, and cracked fibula.
Left clavicle, right ulna, and a nearly ruptured spleen. Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot for any one person to take over their lifetime, and Clint Barton seems to take it on a daily basis.
I absolutely love the sequence where he's in the wheelchair and he kicks it in the street.
Yeah.
And then we get the first appearance of the dog Lucky.
Also known as Pizza Dog.
But we see this is what Clint's doing when he's not in the Avengers.
Yeah, I don't think there's a couple of interactions with the Avengers. I think maybe there's like a handful of issues where like he starts off at like the end of a fight. The issue begins after the fight, and Clint's just going home.
Yep.
And even then, I think they only appear twice, maybe 3 times max.
Yeah, they don't show up a lot.
Yeah, more than anything, this run revolves more so around Clint Barton and the apartment building that he's living in and the tenants that he's living with, and how they're being sort of extorted by the Russian mob. Are they Russian? Are they Polish?
Yeah, they're Russian.
They're Russian. Okay.
Well, yeah, he lives in this apartment building, and like no one can pay the rent because they're trying to buy up all the property. So, what does Clint naturally do? He steals some money and
buys the apartment
building to become the landlord because he's just trying to help out. And then Kate Spencer also joins us as she was the Hawkeye when Clint was dead. She took up the mantle of Hawkeye, and she kind of hangs out with Clint.
Now, where does that fall relative to this run? Because this is the only Hawkeye that I've actually read. So in terms of him being, I knew that he was dead for a time.
He died and disassembled. So it was like, I can't remember, it was the early 2000s. And then he came back as Ronin and Bendis' New Avengers, and then he didn't start being Hawkeye again until I think after Secret Invasion. So this and then I think after that was the Hawkeye Avenging Archer stuff by Jim McCann, and then what's like Hawkeye and Mockingbird. So I think this follows after that. So this is in Marvel Now. This is one of the first Marvel Now books. But this is like 2010s.
I think one of the things that overall ties this book, strings this book along sort of, is David Aja's art.
Yeah.
More than anything else. The simplistic design, it really contrasts with the more photorealistic art. Well, maybe not photorealistic, but more detailed, realistic art that we see. We even see it with the issues that Pulido draws in these issues, or the issues that Pulido draws, sorry. And there's every single page is just packed with panels. The number of panels is just kind of odd. Just found an ace.
You found an ace in your.
Just found an ace of diamonds in my Hawkeye book. Odd. No, one of the things that I really dig formatting wise, and I think ties itself very nice with Hawkeye, is that especially during the action sequences, these panels, and you'll even see it from the slight word bubbles within them, they slow down time using these panels so that you can take in every detail of what's going on. Because looking from Hawkeye's perspective, the man that never misses, he can see every detail of an environment. So we as the reader should also be seeing that. But I think in terms of action, I don't think it slows down that action at all, which I thought was surprising because of just how many panels there are for any given sequence.
No, I feel like the action runs fine. I think it's a really, really well-paced book, the way all the layouts come together. It's never feels like I'm lingering on any page for too long, but there's also very colorful pages. Like when we get the stuff that's drawn by Pulido, it's also still good. Like I think the tape's all drawn by.
Yeah, the tape arc is drawn by him, and there was an annual in this run that he drew, I think.
Yes.
And that the coloring in those issues, big contrast.
Yeah.
The issues that Aja is drawing, the very, I don't know if I want to say simple, but I want to say simple. The simple art style, very small color palettes for Aja's issues. And as we get into Pulido's issues, they're just filled to the brim with color.
Yeah. Well, so there's also there's like a mix of serious stories in here while mixed with comedy.
Yeah.
Like you want to talk about the tape?
I'd rather you talk about the tape. I actually was looking that over when you were out of the room.
You were looking it over?
I was trying to look it over as you were out of the room. We were interrupted.
Oh, well, I'll try to remember what I remember of the tape. It's been a little bit since I read it, but like the whole thing with the tape is that there's this tape that has someone killing it's supposed to be Bin Laden. That's the
that's the parallel.
That's the parallel to it. And it was 3 people that were supposed to they have film that S.H.I.E.L.D. filmed doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It was I think Cap,
Wolverine,
and Hawkeye. But knowing Hawkeye, he's the person that he would never. He has a strong stance against killing, so honestly, he would never be the person to do it. But he's the person that's kind of roped into this thing because
the tape leaks.
The tape leaks.
Because they're trying to find out. S.H.I.E.L.D. is trying to find out who's been leaking information.
Yeah.
And so they use this leaked Hawkeye tape to sort of trace it back to be able to plug.
Yeah, and this is a plot by Madame Mask and Kingpin.
Yeah.
And so Kate and Clint have to go stop it. But this is actually a pretty big moment for their relationship because Kate's pretty convinced that Clint's sticking to his word where he's never killed anyone. But she views it and it turned all out to be doctored footage.
Right.
Anyway, but There's some pretty fun like comedy moments in this, like the part where Clint is falling in the chair outside.
And I think another important moment, at least for Kate and Clint's relationship, is that as Clint is, because by the end of this arc, Clint is in the hospital again.
Yep.
From taking a couple of gunshots to a Kevlar vest.
It's a expensive shoot, 3-piece suit, real expensive, he says.
Yeah. So while Clint is sort of getting the shit kicked out of him, he's getting to see Kate work as Hawkeye. And there's a moment where he actually says, "See, she's perfect," because she also never misses.
Yep. And it's kind of implied that Kate might actually be better than Clint, too. So I think that's the thing. That's the thing as well. That's also a thing when you get into Jeff Lemire's run. But the Hurricane Sandy issue is also really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like because Hawkeye cares for the tenants in his building. This is Clint, by the way. Since we're referring to two Hawkeyes.
Now we have to make that distinction.
But we have the Hurricane Sandy's coming, and one of the tenants in his building is trying to get his dad to move out, and it's just a really simple story of them trying to go and save his one tenant's father. I think the guy's name's Gil.
Mm-hmm. Or Grills, I think.
I think Grills or Gills.
I think he calls them Grills because when they have...
Yeah, because he can't understand what he's saying.
Can't understand what he's saying, and when they have the apartment get-togethers, he's always on the grill, so he just calls them Grills.
But no, his name is Gilbert. Yeah. And he just saves them as like his son, as Gil is trying to save his father's like scrapbook memories and stuff. That's just a solid, good issue of Fraction writing about a real life disaster that was going on. That actually did happen.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. And then from that we get into. I
don't actually know. 6 Days in the Life.
6 Days in the Life, which is the Christmas kind of the Christmas saga.
Yeah, it's multiple. I don't actually remember how many of these sequences there are throughout, but it's big decisions Hawkeye's making in his life.
Yep.
Told out of order throughout the month of December, leading up to Christmas. He gets a nice little interaction with Tony Stark.
Well, the issue begins, and it almost reminds me of the beginning of Lethal Weapon 3, which Shane Black didn't do Lethal Weapon 3, but like it tried to carry some of that humor. The issue begins with a flash of colors, and you can see it's Tony Stark and Clint trying to cut wires. And there's a time.
Both of them sweating bullets.
Yes. And then it pans out to the next page where you see that Clint's just trying to set up his like DVR and cable.
Yeah.
And for some reason he needed to call Tony Stark over to do it.
Well, because Tony Stark's the tech guy.
Yeah.
And Tony Stark actually offers to actually no. I don't think we get to that just yet. I think I was a bit ahead of myself. No. Okay. There's a brief interaction, one of those, like I mentioned in the beginning, the interactions where Clint's sort of finishing up a fight with the Avengers, this time it's Spider-Man and Wolverine. And they convince him to take a couple days off, which he didn't want to do, but he realizes, I don't have superpowers, I could use a couple of days off for Christmas. And we go back to him with Tony Stark, and Tony Stark is offering over and over again to throw out all of this junk and buy him all new furniture, all new everything. And Hawkeye refuses that multiple times, saying, no, it's broken, it's beaten up.
But it's my stuff.
And there's actually the day before.
And then there's the little interaction talking about how Clint now has money now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Tony's trying to talk him down. It's just kind of like this grow up kind of thing going on.
It's a handful of wholesome moments.
Yeah.
And what I went into expecting an action book. I actually, so when I read this, it was Christmas of 2016.
Yeah.
And I had gotten these books, and I was in Portland on vacation.
Right.
And I was busy throughout all the day. I was on vacation. I would get back. It would be late, and I'd be tired. And yet, this book kept me up.
I mean, the way I read it, I read the whole first book in one night, and the next night I read all of book 2.
I was in Portland for a long weekend, and I finished Hawkeye in that long weekend. Because somehow these wholesome moments were what kept me up, not the constant action.
It's kind of this. The 6 Days in Life is almost like this kind of masterpiece in self-loathing.
I think it's told out of order.
Yeah.
Which is one of the interesting things about it. Like, you get to piece together the last couple weeks of December for Hawkeye all out of order. I think it's a great way that this story is told.
Well, and then it gets to one of the best sequences in the book is that he knows that the Russians are planning something soon.
Mm-hmm.
And Kate comes over and he's like, "You're supposed to do something." And he's just sitting there. And then you get this awesome splash page of Aja just having Clint walking outside with an old
longbow.
An old wooden longbow and a quiver, and he just goes outside, and it's implied what he does with that.
He's getting ready for battle, but we don't actually get to see it. It cuts back to December the 19th, where we get a nice interaction where Clint's bringing some of his tenants into his own apartment so that they can watch an episode of a TV show.
Yeah, they're coming over to watch special. Like Charlie Brown, and that's what implied to me. Though in book 2 we do see what the cartoons he was watching were.
Right.
My bad Penny is pretty good. The whole mini relationship with the femme fatale romance.
Of course.
The humor in this book is such Shane Black-like, where it subverts your expectations of what's going to happen, but does it in such a creative and fun way that I don't really want to give it away at all. Also, the Penny arc, it's all the covers are drawn like old pulps. They're awesome.
Mm-hmm. Who do you know who did these covers?
I don't know who did the covers. I think maybe Aja did some of them, but
I don't think.
I love the shot of the story is just titled Girls.
Oh, I think it's Annie Wu, romance comic cover pages, and number 8. Were those what?
Yeah, those ones.
Okay.
The issue just titled Girls. I think it's Hawkeye number 9, where you get the shot of it's Black Widow, Mockingbird, and Jessica Drew Spider-Woman all lined up. All people that Clint has had a relationship with at one point or another, and it's drawn like it's set in the 60s. And it just works so well.
It works so well because this is Clint Barton.
Yep.
So the Avenger, confronted by 3 of his exes.
one of them being his ex-wife.
One of them being his ex-wife that would make any man tremble, and Hawkeye is no different.
Yeah, well, then Bobby stays. You have the sequence where Bobby and Clint finalize their divorce over a cup of coffee, as she stays over at his apartment. It takes a shower there because they get into another fight with the Russians. It seems like every time Clint's trying to get something done, another failed attempt by the Russians to take the building comes out, and it's just God damn it!
They're presented as just the bumbling oafs and the.
What do you mean, bro?
Yeah, what do you mean, bro? They're constantly repeating the word bro in every single interaction, so that you never really take them that seriously as a threat. Even when Hawkeye's tied to a chair surrounded by these mobsters, you don't feel any kind of threat. And even then, I think in that particular sequence, he's even making jokes in his own head.
Yep.
As he's narrating what's going on, so we take them even less seriously as villains. They're more just an inconvenience to Hawkeye getting his life together than anything else.
Also, Bobby divorces him on Valentine's Day.
Oh, yikes.
I love the panel of the "Today sucks, I'm going back to bed."
Yeah.
Every time Clint's at his worst, Kate's there to kind of pull him out of it. It's very much like a brother-sister kind of relationship. It's funny stuff going on. But then we do get the ramping, the part where Gil's killed. After, by the way, he calls him Hawkeye, which is kind of the unofficial title.
They go
for this run.
Multiple pages of Clint trying to get him to call him the right name, and they're like, oh, you mean the guy from MASH? Yeah, Hawkeye. Oh, so Hawkeye. Like, no. These really just quaint little interactions, just as friends. And the scene where he dies, actually,
You're like,
you've got the page open.
Yeah, I have the page open right now. You're like, oh shit.
And that's the big oh shit moment, because this is the Tenant that we've seen more than any of them.
Yeah, you kind of build a little relationship with him. He's kind of palling around.
At least to the point of having empathy for the guy and
Yeah.
knowing that, like, all right, this is not going to end well for somebody.
And we get a guy who looks kind of creepy. He's got a white face. He looks like he looks like a mime.
They do a page where he's in a car about to, find his target.
Yeah.
Where he's putting his makeup on, and it's just unsettling.
Yeah, it's unsettling.
I'm getting as he's drawing the tear under his eye, I'm getting these Clockwork Orange vibes from this guy.
Then you get the issue. I'll let you talk about this one.
You
get the
11.
Pizza is my business.
Pizza is my business. So this is probably my favorite issue in the entire run. This is the Pizza Dog issue, where the entire story we get from the perspective of Lucky, Clint's dog. Now what's interesting is that this issue actually follows the events of past issues that we've seen, just from the perspective of Lucky. But because Lucky's a dog, he doesn't understand the words that are being said around him.
I think Lucky's a girl, actually.
Is Lucky a girl?
I think she is.
I don't know.
I can't remember.
I can't remember either. It has been a while since I've read this straight through. But the few interactions that we have, at the very beginning of the issue, Lucky's listening to Clint and Kate arguing, and you see these
I just want to make sure, remembering right, Clint rescues Lucky from the Russians, right?
Yes. It's a couple of the mobsters are, I think, beating the dog.
Yeah.
It's in issue number 1.
Because he slaps her down
he's
on the
like,
table.
Please
save this dog.
So on the first page, we see Lucky watching this interaction between Clint and Kate, and off to the side, we see how Lucky perceives Clint. He sees, we get a little bubble of Clint's face, and branching off of that, we see an archer pose, a coffee pot, a full bowl of dog food, like what Lucky associates with these characters. A hand,
and then the Hawkeye logo.
Right. So as Lucky goes throughout the apartment building, Lucky passes by all the tenants of the building, and we get to see those little tiny associations, and they actually find the body of Gilbert.
Yep.
And it's I don't know. It's almost complete. There's almost no dialogue in it.
No, you get kind of mumbles.
And what little we get, it's I don't even know the only words that are shown that we can actually read out of the word bubbles are these smaller words that are probably so common.
But you can get the gist of the conversations that are going on.
Right. And plus, we've read many of these conversations already before, so we know what's going on. We don't actually need to see all of these text bubbles to know what's happening. Which I think putting this issue at the end of Volume 1 was a great decision, because it kind of
brings everything together.
This issue, because so much of this story is told in a non-linear fashion, that this issue kind of ties everything together that we've seen. This issue did more to bring me up to speed with what the heck was going on, because a lot happened.
A lot does happen.
A lot happens in terms of just Hawkeye getting this tenant building and managing his own life. And so much of it is told non-linearly that by the end of this issue, even though there was no talking, it was just a dog and a bunch of these association bubbles, I know perfectly what's going on. Which is, it's one of my favorite.
And then
issues.
the ending of Volume 1 is
it's a Young Avengers.
I'm trying to see what this is.
I think it's a Young Avengers Presents.
Young Avengers presents. Should on the back here.
Oh, he's
Young Avengers presents number 6, which is by Fraction.
Yeah, he did write this. I gotta say, this is
getting China. He's scouting Kate.
He's scouting Kate. She's gonna be the leader of this Young Avengers team, right?
Well, Eli Bradley I know as a leader, but yeah, it's kind of because I haven't read Young Avengers. I took it more of like Clint's finally getting around the time. He's like he knows that this girl named Kate Bishop who's going by Hawkeye. He like wants to see. He's like, hey, that's my name.
He wants to see if she's living up to the name, even though he's Ronin. He makes it a point. He's like, I'm still Hawkeye.
Yeah.
He tells her this. Now, all that being said, I wasn't a huge fan of this issue. I think just because I hadn't read any of Young Avengers, so it was just completely unrelated for me. And he shows up as Ronin, so it's very much separate from everything else. It was kind of a departure.
Which, by the way, the guy, the hired killer that the Russians hired, his name is the Clown.
Yeah.
Forgot his name.
Dresses in all white.
Oh, he's just unsettling. He looks like a villain from like some sort of 70s exploitative film. Does he appear
anywhere else?
I don't think so.
He's not like a...
Not that I know of.
No kind of recurring villain. He's just a creepy looking assassin.
If Vince listens to this, he can let us know.
Oh, he will. I'm sure.
What's really cool in the back of the books is they put in Aj's drawing playlists, the stuff he listened to.
Yeah, we actually listened to a couple of these songs beforehand, and I'm a big fan.
One of them will be the intro of the video.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure which one.
Yet.
I don't know.
I have an idea of which one we're going to do, but I'm not going to say.
Yeah.
Though we get into volume 2, and we end volume 1 with Kate getting fed up with Clint's shit.
Mm-hmm. And
she's going off to
Los Angeles.
Yeah, she's going off to LA. And Clint is left alone. But before we get into that part, we get to see during the issue where Clint is watching after the kids in his apartment.
He actually falls asleep.
And this is one of the cartoons he remembers watching.
And these cartoon characters are all kind of it says Winter Friends.
Yeah.
So I think it's just supposed to be kind of playing off the Avengers a bit. I don't know if it's
a little bit.
I don't know if there's definitely not like a one-to-one comparison, but it's kind of Hawkeye's hallucination or not dream of this cartoon. We actually see Clint appear as a dog in a purple vest with an arrowhead on it. Just a really cute issue more than anything else.
Yeah.
And an indication that all of this is lighthearted. Much action
because what's about to happen is
very much not lighthearted. This is the only actual downtime we've seen Hawkeye take. Every other issue, even when he says I'm going to take a couple of days off and we get a day in the life issue, he's all the days he's taking off, he's unpacking, he's setting up stuff in his apartment, he's helping his neighbors. So at the end of the issue of all of these cartoons, it pans back out to show a sleeping Hawkeye on the couch, and they actually the family that was there, they all kind of they
tucked him on his couch.
They shush each other. The woman tucks him in, and Lucky kind of snuggles up next to him, and it's just a nice little. This is the calm before the storm.
Yep. And then we see next issue we get the beginning of. We get the beginning of the kind of saga with Clint's brother Barney, which once again we're seeing things out of order. And while we see that, Kate is going on her own adventure out west.
Yeah, there was. What issue was that, or was that an annual?
I don't remember what
they do a single issue where she goes to LA, and I think Polito drew this one too. I want to say it was an annual, but I don't actually.
Can't remember exactly.
But the reason I don't remember it is because I wasn't a huge fan of this issue, largely because I think this book really works because of the relationship between Kate and Clint.
Yeah, I'd say Volume 2 kind of doesn't work as well because they're both each going after doing their own thing, and then it comes together.
It does come together, and it comes together for a great finish, but those first couple of issues... Now, the issues with Barney, I think, were fine.
Yeah, I like the Barney stuff.
Because, again, we're seeing not just a singular character, but we're getting to experience the relationship of Clint and Barney.
Right.
So it's almost like wholesome in a way, even though what comes next is Barney kind of screwing Clint over.
Yep.
In some of the worst ways.
But then we get back to get back into we get back to the funeral, which is now where you see the conversations we didn't get to see when Lucky was looking at the body and stuff on that. And
the police show up. We actually, we see those interactions where Clint, calls Lucky. He calls him good boy.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I don't know. Lucky might be a girl.
Okay.
Might be a girl, but Clint says boy.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Although there could definitely be like something sprinkled in there just for like a little like joke, like it's actually a girl. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Get a lovely shot of Barney on the can.
Yeah, Barney is never made out to be the good guy.
No, he's not.
They meet up because Barney is in trouble, needs help, needs to crash at Clint's for a while. But we, from the get-go, are never meant to believe that these are good guys in any way, or that Barney is a good guy in any way.
Right.
At one point, there's a panel after we get that nice shot of Barney on the can. There's a shot where both Clint and Barney are kind of they're standing facing each other and they're both looking down at their feet.
Man.
Yeah. Because even though Barney ends up being kind of a piece of shit, he's still Clint's brother, so they still have these brotherly moments of sorts.
And then after that, we kind of what we do is every other issue is we go check out on Clint, and then the next issue's Kate, and kind of go back and forth.
Yeah.
Like I said, Kate is trying to do stuff uncovering like an espionage thing with all revolving around Madame Mask, which actually kind of goes back to all the stuff that happened in the tape since they tangled back there.
Right.
And I guess as that story unfolds, we'll get back to it. But I was much more interested in the stuff where what was going on with Clint.
I was much more interested with Clint. I think the last couple of issues that they do with Kate, at that point I was invested, but because it was a brand new, story in a completely different place with completely new characters, it took a couple of issues for me to become invested, and because they were doing every other issue, I was having a hard time actually, I didn't want to keep track of it because I was much more interested in what was going on with Clint anyway.
Yeah, because he knows that the Russians are eventually going to be, he's getting outnumbered now.
And if I remember, I think I was some article or something towards the end of this run, and ended up being multiple months in between issues. I don't know when that point is. Now, granted, it doesn't show in the story itself. The story is extremely well paced. That publication issue doesn't, just reading it as a volume, it doesn't come up. But if I was waiting, multiple months in between issues, and it was doing this back and forth thing, I don't know if I would have kept up with the series and enjoyed it as much as I did as reading it as just a volume. That was just an interesting little tidbit that I think I read it today.
Yeah, I liked all the stuff in Volume 2 that revolves around Clint, just because it's kind of it's
that Shane Black vibe.
Yeah, it's like it can't possibly get worse.
It
has.
And then it gets worse. I was saying this to Mike the other day. I don't know if we go more than half an issue without seeing Clint in bandages or with a broken nose or something. Yep. And the one time I think we do, Clint's trying to tie his sweatpants up when he's confronted by these mobsters. And, and he's just in...
he's caught with his pants down.
He's literally caught with his pants down. He's in a ratty old t-shirt. It's laundry day. This is not a good look for Hawkeye.
And kind of this Avengers teammates are kind of confronting him with you should really just call the cops. What you did was irresponsible.
They're even sometimes I think they even are offering to help him, and he's like, no, this is my problem. I got myself into this.
I'll get myself out
of this.
And we kind of were left with one of the best cliffhangers in the book, is that we end the issue where they're kind of figuring out how the clown got in, with them going down to the basement, and the clown's down there, and he shot Barney and Clint, and they're both bleeding out. Is Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman, is like kind of rushing down. She's too late to get them.
Yeah.
And then we cut back to
Kate. Now, granted, because I read this in a matter of like a day,
right?
That wasn't so bad. Because it was, like you said, it was one of the biggest cliffhangers of this series.
Yep.
So I wasn't surprised that they didn't, deliver that resolution right away. I also didn't mind it because by this point I was more invested in Kate's story. There was more going on. She's
fighting Count Nefaria, and it's also she's kind of uncovering things about her dad, where her dad, who has a lot of money and is rich,
but a lot of that money comes from not so great places.
Yeah, he's kind of funding bad guys. Oh no.
Now, one of the reasons that I think this is when I started to enjoy the Kate issues more was that as she starts to learn these things about her father, as she's learning more things about herself, she's learning more and more how to really be Hawkeye.
Yeah, and she's also it's kind of a wake-up call, like the world is not
the way
you want it to be.
It's not all fun and games, because when even these action sequences, when they're fighting bad guys, her and Clint, it's all lighthearted fun, but once she's on her own, it's a dramatically different tone. It's very negative, very oppressive towards her. And she has to come to terms with that. She has to come to terms with the fact that a world with her or when she takes on that responsibility of Hawkeye, it's not all fun and games. And getting to see her kind of come out of her shell a bit and become Hawkeye and accomplish what she does on her own was enough for me to, like I said, get invested with it.
Yeah, and then we finish out parts. I think we get 2 issues, and then we go back to Clint. Mm-hmm. And is this the death? This is the death issue.
Yeah, because when Jessica Drew finds him, he's been shot in the ear.
Yeah. Wait, was he shot in the ear, or did the gun go off so much close to his ear and the bullet grazed him?
I think so. I think that might have been what it was. But when Jessica Drew finds him, I just happened to he's out of the ear. Yeah, he's deaf at this point.
Which is a really, really good issue. And a bunch of people apparently were criticizing, I think leading up to this, Fraction, because there was never any elements of his, because Hawkeye being deaf is like one of his traits. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of a service all for them.
Yeah, the first 2 pages I loved. I just absolutely loved these pages. I love when they do these sort of parallel events things.
Yeah.
So the first panel just is the word deaf.
Yep.
And it pans out, and we see that it's a doctor writing a prescription. It's Clint sitting on the examination table. Yep. They're in the doctor's office where we're finding out that Clint is partially deaf.
Yep.
And the bottom of the page is the parents are sort of talking with the doctor, and we see Clint just glaring.
And then the top of the next page is
Clint
it's
now
weird.
Glaring again, but he's now bandaged up, and right underneath that, it's not pen to paper now.
It's on a computer.
It's on a computer, the word deaf.
Yep.
And it's now Barney and Clint in the office talking with a doctor. Barney's in a wheelchair at this point, and we see that Barney and Clint actually already have
they know sign language.
They know sign language, so they don't actually have a problem. The 2 of them can communicate.
Yep.
And I actually think it's really interesting because they'll throw in these panels of sort of a WikiHow on sign language.
Yeah.
Just thrown in between these interactions between.
My favorite thing about it, though, is there are dialogue boxes, but there's no words.
Empty. Yeah, there's no words empty. There's even at the end of one of these pages is Barney screaming something or yelling something at Clint, but since he's deaf, there's no words in it, but we still have the jagged outline to show that he's yelling this.
Yeah.
because Clint understands that it's being yelled at him, but he doesn't know what he's saying.
Exactly.
And this is as the sort of standoff with the Russian mob is kind of coming to a head.
Well, what's funny is the standoff is coming. Like he gets an argument with Clint. Clint's doing his standard like, I don't want to do that. Like he's doing the self-loathing thing again, and because he's stubborn, and you just get this great panel of Barney in his wheelchair just yelling ass. Which, by the way, Barney is developing a relationship with one of the women tenants in Clint's apartment, and we'll see how that works out. They also come back in Jeff Lemire's in Volume 3.
Yeah. Now one of the things that I don't know gets addressed a lot is the passage of time throughout these, because I think the Kate issues take place over several weeks.
Right.
So I think we're meant to assume that these events are happening in parallel.
Yeah.
But we don't see that passage of time as much with the Hawkeye issues. Like Barney goes and he's developed a relationship, but it's clearly developed enough to the point where she's just, welcoming him into the home.
Right.
They've been seeing each other for some time while Barney's been in the wheelchair.
Yep.
So I think that might be my only criticism of this, is that it's kind of hard to know the passage of time. It's not super relevant story-wise, but because it's going back and forth with the Kate issues, I think it would have been better to somehow lay that out a bit more clearly. But we still have these...
Which, by the way, we kind of glossed over this. Barney does have skills like Clint. He was trick shot.
Yeah.
But then you kind of get this great moment where Clint's going up on the roof and telling them what's all going down, and he's signing it while Barney's translating it.
And I think they're
kind of unite. It's almost like this Home Alone moment where they're uniting to stop the Russian mob from getting in.
Yeah. They even they have a moment where Barney pulls Clint in close, and we see the word bubbles, but they now have words in them because Clint can kind of read Barney's lips a bit.
Right.
So we're getting sort of a disjointed text bubble, and Barney actually punches him in the face after Clint says, "They took everything, Barney." Barney punches him in the face and says, "Not yet."
Yep. And then we get this great moment where Clint picks up the phone and he calls Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman, who, by the way, that's who he's having a romantic relationship at this time in the comics with. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Listen, I'm sorry. I need your help. I need everyone's help.
I need everybody's help." And it kind of pans out to find Barney and Clint standing in a bar surrounded by beaten up Russian mobsters.
And Barney is holding 2 tanks of kerosene. And I love that Clint has 2 quivers on him full of arrows, and then he's also stuck another one on Barney in case he needs more.
Now, this is one I'm a big fan of these title pages.
Yeah.
Because the title of the issue, the stuff what don't get spoke, is written in Clint's shadow on the wall, and then we see there's a Daily Bugle.
Yeah, then when it's by fraction.
By fraction
with
Hollingsworth. With Hollingsworth. I just really love that.
And then we're back to Kate.
Back to Kate again.
Who's taking more and more after Clint by getting beat up all the time.
By getting beat up all the time, and by we have these moments where she'll get a phone call from Madame Mask, and they show Kate on her side of the phone, and she's been sleeping on the couch. Her hair is disheveled. She seems to mirror Hawkeye in that sort of lazy crash on the couch attitude about things. So I just think I found it interesting, as she's mirroring him skill wise. She's also kind of a mirror for him as a person.
There's also she's also trying to get information out of this old PI detective that kind of hangs around as well, and stuff that goes on with him. But also Clint has befriended a gay couple that lives on the beach, and they become fun characters.
They become with characters.
And then she eventually decides she takes care of business there, and then she says she's got to go back to New York.
Yeah.
So we leave that story's shut. She beat Madame Mask. And then
Just
we're
took care
going
of
to
business, and we're going all in
we're going all in
with the Russian mob.
with the Russian and a story entitled Rio Bravo, which is it couldn't be titled better enough. With the big showdown.
Oh, I just noticed there's even a moment where they say how much worse can it get, as we're seeing all of these preparations being made. Jessica Drew seems to be leaving his apartment because she's got work. He says, just got to wrap up stuff here. That's, we'll be fine, because that's the stuff that he's got to wrap up is the kind of the big climactic showdown.
Yes.
So they don't know if we'll be fine or not.
A bunch of vans of sweatsuit mobster Russians.
Matching tracksuits.
And it begins with Gil's dad pouring hot molten rocks with arrows on them over them.
It's very, very cathartic.
It's like I said, it's like Home Alone.
It's like Home Alone. Even as I think they only show Gilbert's father in that one other issue.
Yeah,
with
but
the
like
Hurricane
we
Sandy.
know the
But we
relationship.
see
Liz
Hawkeye meets him on the roof, and we recognize that it's him.
Yep. And we also we see the clown loading his shotgun. He's coming in.
I believe he also he recruits pretty much every tenant.
Yeah, pretty much everyone in the building is
in this
coming out.
Home Alone fiasco, because even Clint realizes he's outnumbered at this point.
Yep.
He does need everybody's help.
I absolutely love the fight between him and the clown.
Yeah, the clown appears to not feel pain. He's just kind of stalking Clint through the building, walking very deliberately. Clint will be, diving around, doing these maneuvers to dive out of the way of gunshots as the clown is just deliberately stalking him through the building. I will say the clown is probably the only menacing aspect of the mobsters. Even though we don't, other than this, we don't really see the clown do a whole lot. He's not like a recurring villain or anything. So
no,
all of these menacing things are all implied, but they're implied very well. So Clint's not so much worried about the mobsters; they're more of a nuisance, but he is worried about the clown.
And the way the fight goes, with the way it's paced and the way it's drawn, it almost reminds me of the fight at the end of Taxi Driver. You ever seen Taxi Driver?
I have not seen Taxi Driver.
So at the end of the Robert De Niro is going up, he kind of has to go up this flight of stairs in this apartment building, to kind of like this one, and it kind of winding and turvy, the way the camera moves and stuff. Mm-hmm. I just get vibes of that. Also, the color in that is very it's kind of the same, kind of like this brown sepia-ish tone.
The brown, the
so
red.
It invoked. I don't know if this was purposed. Because I don't know. I haven't spoken to Aja or Fraction, but the way it plays out, it's very much very brutal, and looks with the coloring. It reminds me of that.
So
could that have been intentional? I don't know, possibly.
Here's why I think it was. So as we're seeing this fight take place, even though it's you brought up Home Alone. So Hawkeye is kind of working his way up through the apartment building, kind of dealing with the Russians as he goes, having these traps laid out. So we're assuming that all of these traps is part of this larger plan. We see, Clint actually hits the clown with an arrow, so we're like, okay, Clint's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And all of these pages are drawn with the grays and the purples that we've always seen. We've always seen the apartment complex drawn with the grays and the purples to reflect Hawkeye, because he is in control of the apartments. As he walks through a door and he's hit in the face with a bat, and I believe it's one of the mobster's mothers.
Yeah.
She's hitting him with a bat, and I love this page because it's just this old woman with a bat, but she just becomes just pure evil. And as she's hitting him, we see the words "You hurt my boy" splash up into these panels in blood.
Yep.
Just these.
So Clint's getting the shit beat out of him here.
Just awful. And then after the "You hurt my boy," the first panel we see is Clint getting dragged up the stairs at the trail of blood, and he says, "Everything hurts."
Yeah, everything.
Hurts. Because Clint is it's going to the Browns and the Zepias of the tracksuits. Because Clint is no longer in control of the situation. I love that decision.
But what do we see as Clint is? Well, we see Barney is also looks to be mortally wounded.
Yeah, he's been
stabbed,
dragged up as well.
But Lucky is there at the top of the exit on the roof,
holding an arrow.
So I wonder who's back. And then we got back, and it's the girlfriend of the mobster with the kind of the head guy and the clown. They're all kind of talking about how this is going to play out, and then
there's kind of a standoff between the three of them. It's looks like a Mexican standoff. They all kind of start pulling guns on each other. And Clint runs into the room, and he gets his bow drawn out, and Lucky charges in. She gets on top of the mobster. The tracksuit mobster. And I love this. Clint, and it closes up on the girl. She goes Clint, and the clown, which is just in parentheses curse in Polish. Yeah. And so then once we do have a Mexican standoff, but just 10 minutes ago, as the page says, we see what Kate's been up to, and she appears standing in a bunch of beat up Russian vans, kind of surveying the situation, like, oh shit, what's he gotten himself into this time? But what I liked is that the first time we see her in this sort of the prodigal son returns, she's bandaged up in the face too, just like Clint always is every time we see him. Yeah. Just drawing more and more parallels between the two characters. She works her way up the building, finding all of these Russian mobsters in her way, but nothing seems to be stopping her. And then we see Lucky get hit by the clown's gun. So no one wants to see that happen. No, which then that's Clint's opening to tackle the clown. He gets into a fight there. Which this fight's just so brutal. It is. They beat the hell out of each other. Every panel is another punch, and they're not holding back at all. This is a man whose dog was just shot. Yeah. He's not holding back his punches, but he's also getting the shit kicked out of him by a clown, because this clown he's a trained assassin. He knows what he's doing. Yep, and I talk about being where I get invoked things of Taxi Driver. The clown literally has the same gun out of the sleeve rig that De Niro has in Taxi Driver. Oh, these definitely are not. It has to be. These are less than subtle references here. They even show the mechanism of the sleeve pistol in a little 1-2 action of how it would spring out of your sleeve. Just so everyone knows how we got the gun. I love the scene of the neighborhood watch coming in. The tenants fighting the guys on the street. Yep, armed with bats, axes. One guy has a axe. One guy has an axe. Yikes. And then we get back to the standoff with Kate and the two Russians, and the one guy wants the gun. She throws it up and then quickly shoots him with an arrow. And then we go back to Clint, who's now been shot in the shoulder, and the clown's looking to finish the job. Kate comes back and saves him yet again. Yep, just in the nick of time as he's firing the shot. Yep. And they have a short altercation, but we see the coin trick. The coin trick using a collar stay. He pulls the collar stay out of his shirt collar and flicks it right into the clown's eye. Yeah. The eye with the tear below it, which I just loved. And he a knee, a headbutt, and a couple punches later, he tells the clown that the building's not for sale. Yep. Lethal weapon lines like that. Just been revoked. Right. And then kind of everything wraps up here. And this is at the point in the story where, I was trying to listen to someone on Spotify made a playlist that was Aja's drawing playlists, and
obviously once you run all the way through it, Spotify will just play similar things.
Right.
And I think this was at the point I was reading it where the song "Lonely Boy" by Andrew Gold came up. This will that's the song that will close out the podcast.
Yeah.
And if you want to listen to it, I just thought it worked so well. Is like everything has come together, but it kind of Clint's alone again.
Right.
But
he's alone, but he's not really alone. Barney's run off. He's taken all of Clint's money. He's
taking all of Clint's money, but
he's taking all of Clint's money,
living
but he's
the
with
girl
the
and the
family.
kids.
Yeah, he's taking them out on a boat.
He's retiring.
Yeah.
Which, like I said, if you're interested,
it's like he kind of screws over Clint, but
but this time it's more
itself,
of
it's a wholesome moment.
It's
in
more
itself.
of more of a wink, nudge kind of thing. Like he's going on the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you want to see more of what happens to Barney and the kids, and it is who then becomes his wife, you can read Hawkeye, the third Hawkeye hardcover, which is written by Jeff Lemire, which is worth reading.
I haven't picked it up. I might pick it up this summer.
I guess we'll talk about it here. I got it for like Books A Million for like $10.
Okay. Was it about the length of these volumes?
It's 12
too?
issues.
Oh, okay.
You get a cool story about Clint's past and into the future, and then you get another story that brings in Barney. Mm-hmm. And I liked it.
But like you said earlier,
it's very much supplemental material.
Supplemental.
It's completely skippable.
And I think one of the reasons that you say that, and one of the reasons that I have not felt the need to pick that book up yet, I probably will.
We're getting to it right now.
Is
the ending of this is so good.
I would say perfect. There's no more dialogue at the last 2 pages. Clint is hanging up the phone after Barney tells him, "You're not gonna find me."
Yeah.
He hangs up the phone. He knocks an arrow, and as he's drawing, Kate walks in.
He comes back.
They line up on the line together. They both draw their arrows.
But it's on the top of the second page. Clint just kind of gives this like just this flash. One look to Kate.
And they just know. And they both draw together.
She doesn't even look back at him.
No, she doesn't actually acknowledge his presence at all. She steps up.
And
to
they're
the
just
line.
back, and they both fire. Presumably, they both hit a bullseye.
Yeah, I think
book shut. We know, and their partnership's back on.
I think this ending gave me chills.
Yeah, it's such a good ending.
Because the last couple of panels, as they're drawing, as they're firing, it's both of their silhouettes, and it says a Clint Barton, Kate Bishop comic book.
Yep.
They both fire. The arrows are flying by Matt Fraction and David Aja. It feels like
the credits.
It feels like the rolling credits to a movie.
Yeah.
So I'm just getting like these great vibes of like it's the closing of a movie, it's the closing of a book,
and since the music I'd been listening to most of the time here had been like 70s jazz beats, and closing with that Andrew Gold song, which isn't it's not a 70s jazz beat song, but for some reason it just very much resonated with me as I read it, as it kind of tied everything together.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys will get the full aesthetic like that, but it certainly helped for me, and I think it maximized my use.
I might go back. I might read these last couple of pages with that song playing. You told me about that as soon as I had read the book, or as soon as like.
And I was looking through. I thought it was the first issue where like Clint's like sulking, and it after Kate leaves, but no, it was the end of the book that it played on, and it was just so well put that I just really thought it added to the ending of it. It literally is for me. I'm a huge Shane Black fan. Mm-hmm. It very much feels like Shane Black, the comic book.
The only Shane Black film I've seen is Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Which I say it's my favorite movie. It probably is my favorite movie.
But I think a lot of those Shane Black isms are throughout this. The sort of noir vibe, but every turn it's getting subverted, and it's kind of comedic the whole way through.
But subverts you in a good way.
In a good way that it doesn't feel cheap. It makes every character involved. It humanizes.
It makes
everybody.
sense
too. Because a lot of these noir films, it paints the detective as like the stone cold, not really a human character.
Yeah.
But these subversions make the characters human. And I think especially for an Avenger like Hawkeye, who I've only ever seen some pages with him involved in larger Avengers things, and he's toe to toe with them. He's he's keeping up. He's still an Avenger,
Yep.
but this is not so much the story of Hawkeye as it is the story of Clint Barton and Kate Bishop.
Which really, I remember when this book first came out, everyone said how good it was, and I was like, I always liked Hawkeye, but this is the book that really kind of made him one of my favorite characters.
Me too.
But like,
Absolutely.
I was like, Fraction's working on Hawkeye. I like Fraction, but like Hawkeye getting an ongoing, and then you read it and you're like, you completely know why, and like this comic was practically made for me, so it totally works. I love everyone who worked on this book creatively. It is a masterpiece.
They knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, it's
from like Fraction. You can tell that Fraction set out with this exact story that he wanted to tell.
To everyone that worked on this book, it is 23 issues and they're all good.
Yeah,
and it's one of the best, most complete runs you can probably find.
Oh, absolutely. I am very glad to have this on my shelf.
Yes, and this is like to the people. This is something you can hand to anyone, and just like if you just want good.
Yeah.
Like,
because like when I first got this book, I was just getting into comics.
Yep.
This was one of the first, complete. I don't want to say complete because it continues on, but this was one of.
Well, it did continue on, but with a brand new number one.
But right. Oh, did it renumber?
Yeah, I think it renumbered.
Okay, so this is probably the first.
I think it was all new Hawkeye. Because it was all new Marvel now.
Oh, okay. Publications, so I still don't understand.
That's a topic for another time. Talking about Marvel's failed launch title.
No, but when I got this, it was one of the first complete runs that I was able to read, and I loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
Not even I had no background on the Hawkeye character other than seeing him appear in the Avengers.
Yeah, he's that guy Jimmy Renner plays.
Yeah. But this, I dare say that this is a perfect comic book.
And to the people that don't like superhero comics, you can easily hand this to them. You don't like superhero comics? Here you go.
This is not a superhero comic.
It's a guy who just happens to hang out with some superheroes.
And he's good at shooting arrows. He's really good at shooting arrows.
Yep. Well, in closing thoughts, I really can't recommend the book enough. Anything else you'd want to say?
No, I mean, other than recommending it to anybody. No.
Well, thanks for joining us for yet another podcast. Hopefully, we're going to get to Wade Flash Volume 2. So hopefully that'll be the next one we put in the bank here. So, yep, stay tuned. Also, more things we got coming up. We always got the Clone Saga going on here, but I think the goal is now that we're back on the semester, the goal is to try to have something at least once a week. So hopefully we'll have something for you folks once a week. So with all of that, see ya. Bye-bye.